This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon. So it's very, very important to me that I'm doing BDSM with somebody who I know ultimately respects me completely and entirely. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. We do these videos every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I greatly appreciate those of you guys who come here early, ready, and eager for a new fresh brew of True Tea. Anyway, how are you guys doing? What have you guys been up to? How have you guys been? How's your pandemic? How are things? How are the kids? I'm feeling great personally. I just woke up today and I don't know what the hell is going on. I woke up early, I went on a walk, I had an interview that I filmed for a company, and I got some work done. I've just been feeling really good. And my hair looks cute. Oh my God, my hair looks so cute. You ever I love that moment where you wake up and you're like, I don't even know if today's gonna be a good day. Then you do something with your hair and the whole day is amazing because your hair looks cute. So I'm on top of cloud 9. Let me know how you guys are in the comment box below. We're gonna be having a conversation in this video about politics and BDSM, one of my favorite subjects. So before you do that, before you join us for True Tea, I would highly suggest you go to your kitchen and grab yourself something to drink. Personally, I'm drinking a little bit of squirt soda with some gin. I like drinking gin because it makes me feel like I'm not actually drinking alcohol, you know? It's like skinny alcohol. Anyway, I'm gonna take a sip of this and then let's get right into this conversation. It's healthy alcohol. So guys, I wanted to talk about this because this was something that came up in the conversation we were having around Blaire White's misrepresentation of pet play. Now, if you guys have not seen that video, it is a video that I did responding to Blaire White, who was responding to this pet player named Tony, who did an interview with Barcroft TV, I believe, and he never said in the video that he identifies as a dog, but Barcroft put the title, "My partner identifies as a dog," as the title, and several right-wing creators made responses to this video talking about how ridiculous it is, specifically because Tony just happens to be a transgender man. Now, one of the things that I wish I had done before I posted my video is waited a little bit so that I could see Tony's actual response to Ben Shapiro, who made a similar response, because he did a very long response video that is really, really funny. You guys should definitely go check it out. And one of the things that he brought up was that some of the people who do pet play with him are actually conservatives. And that sort of made me recognize that I think some of you guys would probably be very surprised to hear that BDSM is not necessarily a left-leaning exclusive thing. So I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about that and my own personal feelings around politics within the BDSM community. So yeah, that's what we're here to discuss. And as usual, I would love your True Tea. I would really love to get it. So, you know, as we're talking, make sure you're brewing. Put a kettle on and let's talk about this after. So, as you guys know, I've been living in Los Angeles for a couple of years now, and I feel pretty good about it for the most part. It's expensive and I can never own a home here, but for now it's really fun. I'm enjoying the end of my 20s, beginning of my 30s in Los Angeles, doing all the things that I've wanted to do. One of those things being joining the BDSM community. And for the most part, that's been a really, really positive experience. We've talked on here about how it's been a negative experience for me in certain situations, but for the most part, it's been a very, 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 very positive experience. One of the first conversations I had with you guys as I rebranded True Tea was about politics in Los Angeles, and specifically how frustrating liberals are to me in LA. And my frustration with that came from the amount of performative shit that I saw people do in Los Angeles that made it seem like they weren't really living up to this person that they were telling everybody else to be. That was my biggest frustration with a lot of people in Los Angeles. The fact that they claimed liberal politics, they claimed lefty politics, but they don't really seem to be about that in the long term, you know? And, you know, somebody in my comment, this is an aside, but someone in my comment section made a really, really great comment about this. They talked about how, for example, a lot of lefty-leaning people will talk about how much they don't like anti-Semitism, but only in the context of trying to take down white supremacists, which is a good thing. But then they don't actually do any work to support the Jewish people in their community. They only talk about the Jewish people in their community when it's time to attack a white nationalist or a white supremacist, which, you know, same difference, frankly. So, you know, it was a really interesting point to me because that really did sum up my frustration, that it didn't seem like these people were living their politics as much as they were using their politics as a sort of weapon to bash people over the head with, which I don't personally feel is productive, which is part of why my channel personally has become a little bit more personal, because I think it's good to just talk about the way that we live our lives in a political way and things like that, and the way that politics actually come up in my life. So yeah, I thought that was interesting, and it made me think, because I've learned really early on that just because somebody claims left-leaning politics does not mean that they are a safe person for me. And if you watch that video, one of the many issues that I had with people in that video that I described was actually with a fairly popular, I guess, dominant. I guess if I'm being generous, I guess I could say dominant. And what I mean by that is I mean that he's really just a guy who does BDSM stages, who really doesn't engage at all in the community. And I know that that makes me sound like an elitist piece of shit, but if I never see you at the dungeons, if I never see you at the munches, and I only ever see you at a BDSM stage at a goth club where you're getting paid, I feel a little strange about giving you that title. But that's what he is, and we had an issue because I was in a situation where I felt very vulnerable and was talking about how Trump was trying to make it harder for trans people to exist, and he decided to do one of those not all cis people kind of conversations with me. So, you know, I'm saying all this to say that I have not necessarily been somebody who has felt like the left-leaning people in LA are necessarily always safe and best universally, right? That all being said, I do think, personally for me, the politics of the people that I do BDSM with is very, very important. Very, very important, because for me as a submissive, it is important for me to fully trust that the person that I am giving my body to, the person that I'm giving my trust to, respects me fully and completely. And that's important to me because oftentimes when we're doing BDSM stuff, we are doing these things that are often dehumanizing in other contexts, right? So it's very, very important to me that I'm doing BDSM with somebody who I know ultimately respects me completely and entirely, right? So for me personally, and we'll get further into this, it's very important that the people that I do BDSM with are in the same category as me politically, right? But as I've alluded to, there is a very large spectrum of people who have very different political ideas in LA and in the BDSM community in general. And I think that it's important to sort of talk a bit about that because, you know, like most things, I think that everybody else's personal boundaries are a-okay, but I do want to, you know, advocate a bit for nuance here, because I know that there are a lot of people who would say that a right-leaning person in general just is a bad BDSMer, and I don't think that that is particularly true. In fact, one of the people who I respect quite a bit in the BDSM community, and who he used to live in Los Angeles, no longer does. I won't say where he moved, but he was somebody who I when I first came into the community, had a ton of respect for, still do. And I did not know this until much later, but it turns out that he is a Republican. And he is one of these people who his Republican politics mostly are about, you know, money, frankly. He left LA because of taxes, you know, which, hey, I don't blame him. As I said, I don't think I'll ever own here. But I can't look at somebody like that and say that his right-leaning politics contradict his ability to do BDSM safely, right? And I think that it's there. We do need to sort of have this. There's a difference between I'm not going to give myself to a person who doesn't, fully support and believe in the things that I believe in or whatever, and this person is an unsafe BDSMer because he's a Republican. Now, when it came to this particular guy, he's somebody who in LA, very well known, very well respected, somebody who put a lot of time and energy into cultivating, a lot of education and things in the LA BDSM community. And when he moved to a place that I won't say, because I'm sure people will figure it out the moment I say the city, but he moved to a place that is very classically quite lefty. And he started trying to, spread his wings in the BDSM community. And the moment people found out that he was a Republican, there were a million posts made about him, about how he was a this and a that and a blah, 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 blah. And he really, before he was able to just get into the community, was completely canceled, really for doing nothing other than having certain political beliefs. And, of course, in the BDSM community, oftentimes when people get canceled, it's because they are unsafe players. That's not the case with this guy. He's just a Republican. Now, is he a person who I would want to bottom for? Technically, probably. But because of his beliefs, I personally don't want to bottom for him. And I guess I understand why people would be like, well, hey, this guy, just so you know, is a Republican. But the way that it went down was really this sort of witch hunt that essentially led to him being chased off, out of the community. Now he lives up in the mountains and really doesn't do BDSM in the way that he used to. And so I bring up that story just to say that for me, I want to argue a bit for the fact that you can be a Republican and be on the right and not be a bad BDSMer. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to fight for those people at all. And I'm really not. But I just find that it's like a false dichotomy that people often have where you are on the left and that means that you are a bad player. These two things don't necessarily go hand in hand, right? No, not really necessarily, right? Now, I will say this. I've referenced this a few times, but one thing I think is quite important to understand about me specifically is that, yes, I'm trans, but I'm also very straight. And the spaces that I exist in, in the BDSM community are straight BDSM spaces. And so I'm probably not, I don't have access to a lot of the more queer aspects of BDSM culture because I am a submissive woman who is, typically feminine, who, bottoms for men who are dominant, and that kind of creates a certain bubble, I would say, that doesn't really give me full access to everything. So I would love for people who are part of those communities to give me a little bit more conversation here. But I guess the reason why I run into this is mostly because those are the spaces that I exist in. There is a pretty large group of really older dominant men in LA who are part of this, I'm not gonna get too specific, but they're part of a club and they specifically subscribe to heterosexual leather. And I'll never forget one of the first times that I ran into these guys. I saw one of their pages on a fetish website. And one of the first things it said was something along the lines of if you're a liberal, this and that, don't even think about it. Just all of these things basically saying, if you're on the left, don't even contact me, don't even, because I'm so da-da-da-da-da. And a lot of complaints about, God, what's the word I'm looking for? Political correctness, not wanting to be politically correct and da-da-da-da-da-da. That stuff that white men, that stuff that they like to complain about. But it was a lot of that, and these are people who have been very, very established in the BDSM community, and they are, again, heterosexual leather people. And, I will say that in that group, there are people of various different political standpoints. I know some of these people Some of them are not on the right, but it's very common. I would say it's probably more common than it is not within that particular group, that there are a lot of right-leaning men who do BDSM in that way. And of course there's right-leaning people everywhere, but obviously since I bottom for men, and I'm a woman, these are people that I mostly end up talking to in a deep way, right? And I'll never forget, I've told this story a bit before, but I'll never forget, I was at a BDSM event and there was this dominant who was very interested in me. And he's the kind of guy that I've seen at so many different munches. You know, he is, I think he was a pretty decent looking dude, and he clearly, from the way that he carried himself, seemed like he knew what he was doing. And so I was kind of curious, and I was open to it, and I've seen him enough, and we've missed each other enough, that like I was open to the idea of him potentially approaching me. And we finally got to the time where he kind of did. And when he did, we started having a brief conversation, and then somebody else was talking about Jordan Peterson. I forget how exactly we got here, but because that guy was talking about Jordan Peterson, we went off on this whole other tangent that revealed to me that he was a big Jordan Peterson fan. Now, I'm not here to give a debate with you about Jordan Peterson, but here's what I will say about him is that he, the specific conversation that we had was focusing on Jordan Peterson being upset about the whole, misgendering and you get to go to jail thing, right? Like that was his, I'm sure people remember that if you're familiar with enough about that. There was a law that was being passed in Canada that he read as if you misgender a trans person, you get to go to jail. And so he started making this really stupid argument, because I think we were talking about, forcing people to call you daddy or sir, right? I think that was the point of conversation. And he was talking about that law and was discussing how unfair it was and and tyrannical it was. Here I am, a full trans woman. He likely did not know that I was trans, but he's having this conversation in my earshot. And here's the thing about me, guys. I try very hard not to just dismiss people. And if you can't tell by the fact that I spent half this video defending Republican BDSMers, I don't like to just dismiss people. But one of the things to me about politics is that there are certain things that people will believe in that even if I thought you were a relatively decent person, otherwise, the moment I know you believe in this, it's done. And I don't even remember what was happening this night. I think I was really upset about something. I forget. I was in a really shitty mood. But we started having this conversation, and I remember wanting to avoid it. But that law, if you guys don't know about all this stuff, that law did not say that you would go to jail if you misgendered a trans person. It basically said that if you employ a trans person and you maliciously misgender them and make them feel unwelcomed in their workplace, that there could be some legal repercussions. It was not a law for common citizens who just wanted to, call a trans person the wrong pronoun. It was discussion about how, basically bullying by employers to their employees, essentially. That's really what it was about. And so, of course, that's something that if you read the law, if you actually didn't just listen to what Jordan Peterson was bitching and moaning about, and you looked into it and you read it for yourself, that is completely obvious. It's obvious that was not the case, that Jordan Peterson was not correctly presenting this. And to me, the fact that he didn't know that, the fact that he wasn't curious enough for knowledge, the fact that he didn't even look into that, made the little bit of attraction that I had to him just completely evaporate. The fact that you didn't even look into this stuff before forming a solid idea and opinion. Because here's the thing, I love when men are critical. I love when men have the ability to research. I love when men have the ability to think for themselves. And what him telling me about this Jordan Peterson thing communicated to me was that he is not a man who thinks for himself. He lets other white men think for him. He does not do his own research, doesn't do his own homework. Maybe Jordan Peterson is right about a couple of things. Everybody needs to go clean their room every once in a while, right? But he was wrong about that. And he should not have been using that argument in this context, because to me, it just made him sound like an idiot, you know? And so I just became, I remember I said something to him, and I remember I was really bitchy about it, but like, it was mostly because people were trying to push me into this conversation. And unfortunately, if I'm drunk, there's various different directions it can go. In this particular state that I was in, I was like, let's just be a bitch. So I remember just saying something really mean to him, and basically, you know, because I said shit that I usually wouldn't say. I basically told him that he was an idiot, but I was really polite about it. But it was still, you know, I wouldn't usually say that. I would usually be more tactful, but I was like, you're just, you know, you're an idiot, man. You're a fucking idiot, you know? And so it just made me not respect him, right? And so for me, that's what a lot of my disconnect with people and their politics kind of comes from, is like, unfortunately, I do think certain political beliefs just aren't smart, you know? I can hear certain people's arguments for their conservatism and for their Republican, you know, politics, but like a lot of those reasons are dumb. Quite a few of them are dumb. So it's hard for me to personally respect somebody, especially with my body, if I don't think that they're smart. That's really important to me. And, you know, I try not to say that people are dumb, but that was dumb. That was dumb. It was really hard for me to like act like it wasn't. So yeah, for me, it is really important that my dominants have some sort, my dominants or my tops have some sort of political alignment that is in line with mine. You know, to be honest with you, most of the times that I find myself drawn to dominance, it's when they have slightly more left-leaning politics than I currently have. Nathan definitely has slightly more left-leaning politics than I have. And that's mostly because I really like listening to men argue their points. I love listening to men talk about why they're passionate about certain political things. And what I hear more often on the Republican side is this lack of intellectual curiosity. And what I hear on the left side is just this more interest in, you know, a deeper interest in being, you know, finding solutions and actually thinking for yourself. That's just what I've ran into. Now, we've already talked about how it's not always good, but for me personally, I do want to really only do BDSM with people who I know are aligned with me in that way. And that's actually been harder than you would think. I get approached by a lot of conservatives. Conservatives, for some reason, love me. Conservative men are very, 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 very into me for reasons I still don't fully understand. So yeah, but I just wanted to talk to you guys about that because I think that there's a lot of people who might not get that, might not understand that, you know, politics and BDSM are not really one way or the other. There are so many different sides. There are so many different nuances and ways that people express their BDSM, you know, and I think it's great. I honestly think that it's great that people in the BDSM community are as diverse, if not more. I just think it's interesting. Like, I think, so here's the thing with Blaire White and Ben Shapiro and a lot of people like them responding to this BDSM shit. It's always interesting to me because I know so many conservatives who are into BDSM, so many. And people will point to that as like a contradiction, but I think it's very natural for people to be kinky. I think it's very natural for people to be into BDSM and things like that. I don't think that that's really a strange thing, really. I know it's strange. It is strange. Let's get it clear. It is strange, but I don't really particularly think that it's like uncommon, you know? And I think everybody has kinks and things like that. For me, I want for the people who I do BDSM with to be safe, and I don't feel safe giving myself to somebody on the right. I just don't, and I never will. Does that mean that they're bad players? No. That does not mean that they're bad players. It's just not what's okay for me. And I just want to say that, and I want to just express that, yes, there are quite a few Republicans in the BDSM community, especially because all too often, you know, a lot of BDSM and doing it requires a lot of money, and often a lot of money to pay for a space. And oftentimes the people who want to own land and, you know, create space like that are oftentimes Republicans. Not all the time, but often, quite often. It's far, far, far more common than you think. So yeah, I just think it's always funny that like BDSM gets stereotyped as this lefty thing, because it really isn't. It can be and it should be. We're talking a lot about consent and stuff, and that's important, but you know, people on the right are kinky too. And I think that's more shocking for vanillas than it is for me. Anyway, I think that's all I've had to say in this video. If you are a BDSMer, I would love to hear about your personal feelings about politics and kink. Would you do BDSM with somebody who had a different political alignment than you? Personally, I really wouldn't, at least not intentionally. I could do it with somebody who doesn't exactly align with me, but you know, is really, really good at what they do. But I will probably always prefer, you know, a very, very leftist dominant personally. That's my personal feeling, but that does not mean that the right-leaning folks are bad players. So that is what I had to say. If you made it through this entire video, please put this emoji in the comment box below. The emoji, let me tell you, it's what all the cool kids are doing, you know? And look, I'm cool. I'm a cool kid in the city, okay? And let me tell you, before I put the emoji in the comment section, I was not cool. No one knew who I was. I was just a run-of-the-mill loser. And now look at me. Look at me. The only way to fully reach your cool is to put the emoji in the comment section and be like me. I did it. And this is what happened. And you can too. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Right now, you're looking at 2 videos you can watch if you'd like to continue to sip true tea right here on this channel. And in the corner, there are several ways you can send me a tip if that is something you would like to do. Let me know if that's something that you want to do, because I would appreciate your tip in my box. Let me just tell you. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.